worse than Mazepin, slower than Latifi, and somehow still ending up in the driver's seat of a Formula One car. Mahaveer Raghunathan's career is the kind of story you couldn't make up because nobody would believe it. We're talking about a driver who clocked some of the slowest qualifying laps the modern era has ever seen, who once got stuck trying to do a three-point turn for so long it became a meme. And who managed to get banned not once but twice in the same Formula 2 season. On paper, his resume should have been the end of the road. No wins, no podiums, no sign of blistering pace anywhere. And yet, against all logic, he found himself testing an Alfa Romeo F1 car, and later even a McLaren. So how does a driver go from career backmarker to sitting in the most exclusive machinery in motorsport? This is the bizarre, unbelievable, and often hilarious story of the man many call the worst driver to ever touch an F1 car. Mahaveer Raghunathan was born in Chennai, India in 1998, the same city that produced Karun Chandhok, one of only 2 Indian drivers to ever make it to Formula One. The odds of following in those footsteps were already microscopic. But Mahaveer's journey didn't just start behind, it started way behind. Most professional drivers are already karting at 5 or 6 years old. Mahaveer did not start until he was 13. And just to make things even harder, he jumped into single-seaters the same year. That is like skipping swimming lessons and diving straight into the deep end at the Olympics. Karting is where young drivers learn the foundations of racecraft, the art of overtaking, defending, finding the limit. Mahaveer barely had time to master the basics before stepping into cars that required serious skill to handle. He competed in a handful of junior series across Asia, including the JK Racing Asia Series, MRFF 1600, and Formula Masters China. They were stepping stones, but each move was a leap into tougher competition. By 2014, he was in Italian Formula 4, sharing the grid with names like Lance Stroll. He finished 12th, not a disaster, but not exactly a breakout performance either. Still, Mahaveer kept pushing upward. The next year, he moved into the ultra-competitive European Formula 3 Championship, and reality hit hard. Out of 36 races, he scored 0 points. His best finish was 20th. In a field stacked with future stars, he wasn't just off the pace, he was barely in the same race. Rather than taking a step back to rebuild, Mahaveer doubled down. This decision would become a theme in his career, moving up faster than his results justified, constantly putting himself in situations where the competition was far beyond his level. And the deeper he went, the stranger his career path became. By 2016, Mahaveer's results weren't exactly screaming future world champion. Instead of taking the traditional junior ladder route, he joined the AutoGP Championship. On paper, AutoGP was a respectable stepping stone. In reality, it was on its last legs. Just one race into the season, it merged with a completely different series, Boss GP. And Boss GP is not the place you go if you are trying to get to Formula One. It is basically motorsport's retirement village, a playground for wealthy amateurs who want to drive old single-seaters, everything from ex-F1 cars to decade-old GP2 machines, just for fun. The competition isn't fierce, the stakes are low. The whole thing has more of a cars and coffee vibe than a professional championship. Even there, Mahaveer did not dominate. He was driving a Lola B05/52, a car over a decade old, built for the long-defunct A1 Grand Prix series. It was outdated, underpowered, and nothing like the machines used in serious junior categories. Still, it was single-seater seat time, just not the kind that prepares you for elite racing. He stuck around for another season, competing in the lowest class of Boss GP, the Formula class. This time, he actually won the title, but there was a catch. His only real rival missed 4 of the 14 rounds, handing Mahaveer the championship almost by default. A win is a win, sure, but this was not the kind of result that makes Formula 2 teams line up at your door. And yet, somehow, this strange detour would not be the end of his career. In fact, his next move would defy all logic and catapult him into the most competitive junior series in the world. After years of bouncing between obscure racing series and never really finding his footing, Mahaveer was drifting further away from the traditional path to the top. His results did not scream future star, and his career choices often left people scratching their heads. Then, almost out of nowhere, came the leap that no one saw coming. In 2019, he landed a seat in Formula 2 with MP Motorsport. This was not some struggling backmarker team desperate to fill a slot. MP was a proven, race-winning outfit, the same team that would later take Felipe Drugovich to an F2 title. And yet, instead of pairing Mahaveer with another rising star, they placed him alongside veteran Jordan King. To this day, nobody can say for certain how it happened. He had no major wins, no podiums, nothing in his resume that screamed F1 feeder series material. There were whispers about big sponsorship money from back home, or an Italian motor company footing the bill, but nothing has ever been confirmed. What is certain is that this was the biggest opportunity of his career, the best machinery he had ever driven, a competitive team, the perfect stage to prove everyone wrong, but instead, it became a disaster. From the very first round in Bahrain, the pace gap was almost unbelievable. Mahaveer qualified dead last, nearly 3 full seconds off pole. Even the second slowest driver on the grid was more than a second quicker than him. In a spec series like F2, where the entire field is usually covered by less than 2 seconds, that is not just slow, it is a chasm. And this was not an isolated bad weekend. Race after race, he lagged far behind, never coming close to the points. But it was not just the lack of speed that made his season infamous. It was the sheer number of bizarre incidents and penalties that followed him everywhere he went. If Mahaveer's lack of pace was frustrating, his driving decisions were downright baffling. In fact, his 2019 Formula 2 season would go down in history for one absurd reason: the sheer number of penalties he racked up. The chaos started right away. After the feature race in Bahrain, most drivers slowed down to acknowledge the crowd and return to the pits. Not Mahaveer. He decided to keep pushing after the checkered flag in an attempt to set a fast lap. It was pointless, dangerous, and against the rules. The FIA immediately slapped him with a 10-place grid penalty for the next race. And that was just the beginning. Every weekend seemed to bring a fresh incident. In Baku, he overshot turn 3 and went down the escape road. Nothing unusual there. But instead of quickly turning around, Mahaveer spent nearly 2 minutes live on TV awkwardly shuffling his car back and forth, completely failing to execute a basic 3-point turn, even with marshals trying to help. By the time he got moving again, his brakes were overheating, his engine was cooking, and his gearbox had endured dozens of reverse gear engagements it was never designed for. Then came Monaco, where he ignored the weighbridge call, an automatic penalty. In Spa, he was caught speeding under yellow flags. At almost every round, there was something: collisions, procedural violations, ignoring race control instructions. The low point, or maybe the high point of comedy, came at Paul Ricard. On June 22nd, he managed to pick up 9 penalty points in a single race. He failed to follow the virtual safety car procedure, not once, not twice, but 3 separate times in that race alone. The stewards had seen enough and banned him from the next round in Austria. To put this in perspective, in Formula 2, 12 penalty points in a season equals a race ban. Mahaveer somehow reached 12, served his ban, had his points reset, and then collected another 12 before the year ended. 2 bans in one season, something almost unheard of in modern motorsport. By the time the year was over, he had a grand total of 24 penalty points, a record that may never be broken. And yet, through it all, he somehow managed to avoid being dropped mid-season. Amid all the chaos, there was one moment in 2019 that Mahaveer could technically call a highlight, though it came with a giant asterisk. It happened at Monza, a circuit famous for producing drama. On paper, Mahaveer scored his first ever Formula 2 point by finishing 10th in the sprint race. In reality, it was pure luck. Almost half the field failed to finish, either through crashes, mechanical failures, or chaotic incidents in the slippery conditions. Mahaveer simply kept the car in one piece and picked up the final points, paying position by default. It was not the result of a sudden burst of pace. He had not magically closed the gap to the leaders. His lap times were still well off the pace, over a second slower than the midfield runners, but the attrition rate played perfectly into his hands. And that single point would be his first and last in Formula 2. The rest of the season was more of the same, qualifying at the back, finishing far from the points, collecting penalties like trading cards. By the Abu Dhabi finale, his reputation as one of the slowest and most error-prone drivers in F2 history was sealed. The final nail came when he failed to follow the practice start procedure, something the stewards called extremely dangerous. It earned him yet another penalty, but because it was the last race, he narrowly avoided a 3rd ban. Unsurprisingly, there was no contract renewal for 2020. After just one full season, his Formula 2 career was over, ending with 1 point, 24 penalty points, and a legacy built more on memes than results. After his disastrous Formula 2 season, Mahaveer all but vanished from the motorsport spotlight. No big announcements, no high-profile moves, just radio silence. For almost 2 years, he did not appear in any major racing series. Most assumed that was the end of the road. Drivers with better results and stronger resumes had disappeared into obscurity after far less embarrassing seasons. And given the sheer number of mistakes, penalties, and poor performances, few believed any serious team would take another chance on him. But then came the twist nobody saw coming. In 2021, Mahaveer suddenly resurfaced. Not in a junior category, not in a GT series, but behind the wheel of a Formula One car. It was not just any car either. Alfa Romeo gave him the chance to drive their C38 during a test session at the Hungaroring, sharing track time with rising star Theo Pourchaire. For Mahaveer, this was the ultimate leap, from being the backmarker of backmarkers in F2 to piloting one of the most advanced racing machines on Earth. Unsurprisingly, the results were not pretty. He was nearly 2 seconds slower than Pourchaire, a gap that in F1 terms is massive. And yet, the fact he was there at all baffled fans and angered those who believed more deserving drivers had been overlooked. The story did not end there. In 2023, Mahaveer found himself in an F1 cockpit again, this time with McLaren, testing their 2020 MCL35 at the legendary Paul Ricard circuit. The speculation was instant. Had he landed huge financial backing? Was this another example of motorsport's pay driver culture at work? Whatever the reason, Mahaveer had done the unthinkable twice. When you look back at Mahaveer Raghunathan's career, it is hard to find another driver whose legacy is built almost entirely on chaos, penalties, and pure bewilderment. He did not collect championships or race wins. He collected memes, penalty points, and stories that fans still bring up years later. To his critics, Mahaveer became the textbook definition of a pay driver gone wrong. A living example of what happens when money opens doors that talent cannot keep open. To others, he was a kind of cult figure. The internet dubbed him Lord Mahaveer, not out of respect for his results, but out of sheer disbelief that he had made it so far up the motorsport ladder. His antics in F2, from the infamous Baku reverse gear debacle to racking up 24 penalty points in a single season, became part of racing folklore. Those moments were not just mistakes. They were so absurd that they became viral in the F1 community. Even in 2024, clips of him trying to turn his car around in Baku or pushing after the checkered flag still circulate on social media, usually captioned with disbelief. But beyond the comedy, Mahaveer's story is also a sharp reminder of how politics, sponsorship, and connections can sometimes outweigh raw talent in motorsport. For every Mahaveer who makes it to F2 or gets an F1 test, there are dozens of incredibly skilled drivers stuck in the lower ranks, simply because they do not have the same financial leverage. And yet, whether you view him as a joke or as a cautionary tale, his name is cemented in motorsport history. Few drivers can claim to have been banned twice in the same season, test-driven 2 different Formula One cars, and still be remembered more for their blunders than their results. In the end, Mahaveer Raghunathan's career is a paradox. On paper, he reached levels of motorsport that most drivers only dream of. Formula 2, official Formula 1 tests, racing in Europe's top circuits. But in reality, he is remembered not for brilliance behind the wheel, but for the sheer scale of his blunders. From penalties that piled up faster than his lap times, to moments so bizarre they became instant internet classics, Mahaveer's time in the spotlight was as unorthodox as it gets. He did not change the sport through skill, but he left an unforgettable mark through chaos. The kind of legacy that, in its own strange way, guarantees he will never be forgotten. Because in motorsport, not every legend is made by winning. Some are made by being so bad, you become iconic. And whether you loved him, laughed at him, or could not believe what you were watching, one thing is for sure: there will never be another quite like Lord Mahaveer. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this dive into one of motorsport's most unbelievable careers, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next story.